heading to the other side of it, some of these deals that have been completed, or at least most of the deals that have been completed. I'm going to start with mine. I was going through the list of all the players that have been signed up. I think one of the most active teams is obviously very close to Raider Jim's heart. The Raiders, very active, obviously bringing in Jimmy Garoppolo, Amir Abdullah, who I've always been a fan of, and Jacoby Myers. Interesting to see there. They did part ways with Darren Waller. We'll see how that plays going forward. The Saints try to do the Drew Brees 2.0, take an AFC West cast-off quarterback and try and bring him up to a Hall of Fame level. We'll see if that's there for Derek Carr. He's heading to New Orleans. And then a very, very interesting, I really do like this little saying I just came up with. The Giants gave Daniel Jones the bag and Saquon the tag. Once again, another non-exclusive tag. You like that? And then the last bit of kind of off-season news that has caught my attention, I think we have to be getting ready to call up the people at Guinness, because I believe we're getting to the world's longest trade negotiation. About 6 weeks ago, it was announced Aaron Rodgers was going to the Jets. We're 10 days away from the draft, and Aaron Rodgers is not officially a Jet. So I wonder if maybe they're just wondering, hey, why don't you go pick the players you're going to pick in the draft? And maybe we want one of those, or, instead of trading the pick, take this guy and then we'll trade him for you. Obviously some T's to cross and I's to dot in that deal. But Raider Jim, what are your thoughts on the offseason thus far?
Yeah, it's interesting. You hit on a lot of them. Of course, Jimmy G got 67.5. I think Derek Carr got 150 and a couple extra years on that. I will tell you, Garoppolo gets this team over 500. If he gets them 12 wins, he's going to look like a superstar out there. And he got the base to do it. We'll see what happens, but I'm kind of glad to see him in there. I think he's going to be a good fit for the offensive scheme. They also they're trying to cover the move of Waller. They brought in Juwan Johnson at 2 years, $12 million, or they gave him that bonus, which is a good deal for them. I will tell you some of the interesting things in free agency that I'm seeing. Josh Jacobs, their franchise tag that guy. He has not signed yet. He still has not signed. Waller got pushed over to, it was the Giants, I believe. He has not signed yet. So, boy, these franchise tag things could blow up on everybody. They're going to be sitting right there with Lamar Jackson. Who knows? And I wish Coach was on the team, because the Raiders have been very, very active. But I don't know if they have been as active or not as active as the Saints. Those guys are going nuts out there doing different things. They got Juwan Johnson. I made that wrong. That was actually the tight end that they brought in for Derek Carr. See, I look at my notes, I see Derek Carr, I automatically think the Raiders.
Immediate.
That tight end was brought in for Derek Carr, 2 years, $12 million. But they also, on the other side of the ball, they got these two defensive tackles, Nathan Shepard and Kalen Saunders. And let me tell you, 3 years, $15 million for Shepard, 3 years, $14 million for Saunders. That defense was good as it was. Now they've got more incentive to go out there and just really rack it up. I do have on my notes the Jones and Barkley pair out there in Giant Land, and they've got it. But again, it's that Waller's hanging out there. They bring in Waller, though, and that's going to be good. Jets given Allen Lazard 4 years, $44 million. To me, that right there that's the carrot that they're dangling, I think, in front of Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers has to have a familiar target. He lost Adams, but now he's got Lazard out there in New York. That wouldn't be a bad thing. The other free agency move that I'm waiting to see, will it happen? And that is Zeke Elliott to Cincinnati.
Ooh.
I can't believe what has gone on with Joe Mixon and what's hanging out there. And they're going to need somebody to probably step into that position. And why not Elliott? Okay, love him, hate him, love Jerry Jones, as you said earlier in the podcast. Hey, the guy can probably still play ball. Another key to that is he happens to be represented by the same agent or agency as Ja'Marr Chase. So there you are, something to keep in mind. Oh, yeah, Jalen Ramsey to the Dolphins is another move.
Sorry, who is that?
Jalen Ramsey to the Dolphins.
Yes.
That move, that secondary just got a lot better, and they weren't too bad to start with.
Yeah, I think these franchise tags now are kind of turning into, the world's most expensive game of chicken, because that's essentially all it is right now. Right now, the leverage is probably with the team, depending on what player we're looking at. But as we get closer to the season, once again, I think the leverage starts to get towards the player because the team's going to want most of these players on the field. And the teams are going to look around and go, hey, no one's signing you. Might as well just come over here. And who knows, maybe their agent's saying this team's sniffing or that team's sniffing, but they're not going to do it for a few weeks. Well, Josh Jacobs isn't going to run onto the field and put himself at risk while his agent's saying that, the Commanders want his services. However, they can't do anything. And I believe, if I remember correctly, I should have checked this earlier before I brought it up, but it is what it is. I believe these players can sign with these other teams or up until week 10, I believe, of the new season. So it would be very interesting to see, week 6, week 7, maybe some of these players wait for the inevitable wave of injuries in training camp, preseason, early season. And they're kind of out there going, hey, here I am, come and get me. And they have to pay a lot, but they get what they need. It's going to be very interesting going forward to see how the franchise tags do end up shaking out. Like I said, big, expensive game of chicken with, let's be honest, people that have very large egos. So we'll see exactly how that goes. Yes, sir.
Yeah. And, looking down the list, team by team by team, I will say one thing that I saw. So there are some smart guys out there. There are a lot of offensive linemen who got a nice little bump or a nice little offer, and that's good to see. Sometimes those are the underrated guys or the guys you don't hear. They certainly don't get the press because they got a nice signing bonus or a nice extension. But a lot of teams are investing in those defensive linemen and those offensive linemen.
Yeah, I think that's I know you've always been a big proponent when we break down the games, during the season, the big uglies up front, whether offensive or defense, that can really get the job done. And it's not obvious to the conventional fan, but you do see it eventually when you continue to watch football, that those trenches are a big region to control and be successful. So we shall see. And once again, free agency, like I said, it's kind of broken up into 2 tiers. It's the first week. Essentially, it's a flurry of deals, maybe some trades sprinkled in, and then we kind of go all quiet on the Western Front. The draft happens, everyone kind of sees where they are, and then we get round 2 of free agency where teams start to dip their toes in. I think that's when we'll see the Ezekiel Elliott's, and who knows, maybe someone comes sniffing around, for the Josh Jacobs, or hey, maybe one of these teams at the top of the draft, something crazy happens, they don't get the quarterback they want, and maybe they finally say, okay, it's time to take a chance on Lamar. But still about 3 months before we all kind of really know how all the dust has settled on that, but we have a pretty good idea for now. But